Okay, for question 13 on the in-class practice exam that I handed out, it says a company has a bond that yields 6.10%, so the yield to maturity is 6.10%, and recently had capital gains of minus 0.14%, ending with a price of $1,128.47. And it's asking, then the interest payment is closest to. So we're looking for what the interest payment was, okay, during that year. What was the interest payment during this year that we're talking about? Okay, so we're left with a number of choices. So how do we calculate this? Well, we're told what the price was at the end of the year. I think first of all, we need to talk about yield to maturity. So it's telling us that the yield to maturity is 6.1%. So if you remember from class, I wrote this on the board a couple of times. What actually goes into that yield to maturity, or that yield that you're going to earn each year that you hold this bond until its maturity? So it's telling us we're going to earn 6.10% over the course of the year. So what makes up that return? Well, it's two things: the current yield and the capital gains yield. Okay? We can also write that as the interest paid, okay, because the current yield represents the interest payment that we're actually going to receive, plus capital gains. Okay, and the capital gains are from the movement of the bond's price up and down. So we know what the ending price of the bond was. The ending price was $1,128.47, and we know what percentage change occurred in the bond's price. So it tells us they recently had capital gains of minus 0.14%. So we need to calculate what the price of the bond was at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to call that PV0, or the price of the bond, the present value of the bond at the beginning of the period, or the beginning of the year. Okay, so I'm going to take the price at the end of the year that was told to us in the question, and I'm going to divide that by 1 plus the change in the bond's price over the course of that year. Okay? And it told us that there was capital gains of minus 0.14%. So 1 plus minus 0.14%. So this will give us a price of the bond at the beginning of the period of $1,130.06. We'll call it 25. Okay, so we can see that the bond lost minus 0.14% over the course of the year. So it went from $1,130 per bond to $1,128 per bond. Okay. Well, this 1,130 minus the 1128.47, we know that difference there was this capital gain. Okay? Well, we also know that this minus 0.14% was the capital gains yield. So we can say the 6.10% yield to maturity equals this unknown current yield plus this minus 0.14% capital gains yield. Okay? Knowing that, we can use this formula here So knowing that, we can use this formula here to rearrange this formula to solve for what we're looking for. And remember, what we're looking for is how much interest was paid. Okay, so we can look for the current yield here. So if we rearrange this, we can see that the current yield equals this 6.10% minus this minus 0.14% capital gains yield. So we end up with a current yield of 6.24%. So remember what that represents. That represents the interest paid during the course of the year. So if the bond price started the year at 1,130.0625 and the interest that we were going to be paid during the course of that year was 6.24%, we can simply multiply and arrive at the dollar amount of interest paid. So I'll just write it out here. Interest paid equals the price of the bond at the beginning of the year multiplied by this current yield of 6.24%, and that will give us the interest paid during the course of the year of 70.50. And actually, when I do this, I come up with 70.552, but because of rounding errors, I should have 70.50. I just didn't take things out to the decimals. So if we look at our choices, choice A is 70.50. So that represents the interest that we paid during the course of the year. So that is question 13.